Okay, so let's take a look at page 113. Exercise B. Talk with a partner. Look at the picture. Ask and answer questions. Use the past continuous and the verbs in the box. So, if you look at the example, it says, what was Bill doing at 7 p.m.? And the answer is, he was reading. So if you look at the picture, you can see a lot of people, and we can ask a question for each person or group of people using the past continuous tense. So if you want to practice with someone in your family, that's good. One person can ask the questions and another person can answer the questions. So when you do the activity, just make sure you pay attention to whether it's one person or more than one person for the activities, because that will determine whether you use was or were. So you have to make sure you make the subject and verb agree. Okay, so if it's singular, we use was. Plural, then we use were. Okay, or actually third person singular and third person plural. Okay, so use these activities here and make questions and answers. Now, of course, if you're doing this by yourself, you can ask the questions and answer on your own. Okay, so when you're finished, you can, or first of all, pause the video, and when you're finished, you can continue. Okay? Okay, so let's take a look at knit, the activity knit, and let's find out who's doing that. Okay, so we can see that Elisa is knitting. Okay, so we can ask the question, what was Elisa doing at 7 p.m.? What was Elisa doing at 7 p.m.? So we can answer, she was knitting. Okay, so we have to add another T. So K-N-I-T-T-I-N-G. Okay, so she was knitting. Okay, and then the next one, play a game. So we can see that Isaiah and Beatrice are playing a game. So we can ask, what were Isaiah and Beatrice doing at 7 p.m.? Okay, because it's third person plural. Okay, and then we can answer, they were playing a game. They were playing a game. Okay, and then read. We already did that in the example conversation here. So we're going to skip Bill and move on to the next activity. The next activity is sew. And we can see that Maria is sewing. So we can ask, what was Maria doing at 7 p.m.? Okay, and we can answer, she was sewing. She was sewing. Okay, and then talk. So let's see, who's talking? Who's talking? Judy is talking. Okay, and we can add on the phone. So we can say, what was Judy doing at 7 p.m.? What was Judy doing at 7 p.m.? She was talking, or she was talking on the phone. That's probably better. So she was talking on the phone. And then finally, watch TV. We can see John and Sandra. So let's ask the question, what were John and Sandra doing at 7 p.m.? What were John and Sandra doing at 7 p.m.? And we can answer, they were watching TV. They were watching TV. Okay, now I want you to make a question with Pedro. There's one more person, Pedro. Okay? And then after you ask the question, I want you to answer the question, also using past continuous tense. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so you can ask the question, what was Pedro doing at 7 p.m.? What was Pedro doing at 7 p.m.? So we can say, he was also watching TV. He was also watching TV. Or maybe you said, he was sitting down. Just, he was sitting down. Or he was sitting in the living room. Or he was sitting in the sofa. Or not in, we say on. We say on the sofa. So you might have had a variety of answers, and that's fine. Now we're going to skip exercise 3, and we're going to look at the worksheet or look at another worksheet. So let's look at the instructions. What were these people doing at 7 p.m. last night? Complete and answer the questions. So we can see 6 people here and their activities at 7 p.m. last night. And then if you look at the questions, you just need to complete them. Some of them are information questions like number 2, and some of them are yes/no questions like number 1. So if you look at number 1, it says, was Tina cooking dinner? So let's find Tina and her activity. I was cooking dinner. So yeah, we can say yes, she was. Okay, that's the short answer. But of course, we can practice making a longer answer. We can say, yes, she was cooking dinner. She was cooking dinner. Okay. So take some time to complete these questions and answers. Now, if the answer is no, then I want you to I want you to add another sentence and include what they were doing. Okay? So if the answer is no, then include the activity they were actually doing. Okay? So you can pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, so let's look at number 2. We should say, what was Dino doing? Or Dino, I'm not sure, but what was Dino doing? So if we look, we can see that he was talking on the phone. Okay, he was talking on the phone. And then number 3, this is a yes/no question. And Frank is third person singular, so we can ask, was Frank talking on the phone? So let's find Frank, and we can see no, he wasn't. Okay, that's the short answer, but I asked you to add the actual activity. So we can say he was reading the paper. Okay, and paper means newspaper here. When we say the paper, then it's usually the newspaper. Okay, number 4. What was Pauline doing? And this is an information question. So let's find Pauline. We can say she was emailing her friends. She was emailing her friends. And then number 5. This is a yes/no question. And if you look at the subject, it is third person plural. So we need to say, were Sam and Louisa cooking dinner? Were Sam and Louisa cooking dinner? And we can see, no, they weren't. Okay, so that's right. No, they weren't. Okay, now, what were they doing? And that's actually the answer to the number 6. So you can see that the answer, I already put the answer here, but the answer is the question is, what were Sam and Louisa doing? So we can see that you can put it there, that's fine. Or, of course, it's the same answer. They were babysitting. Now, we have to make sure we use the third person form of our. So instead of our, we say their grandchildren. Okay, so they were babysitting their grandchildren. Okay, now let's go down to the next activity, which is exercise B. Okay, so it says correct the mistakes. There are 2 mistakes in each sentence. Okay, so let's look at number 1. What Beth was due yesterday morning. If you can see here that we need to switch these 2, Beth and was. So we have to say what was Beth and then doing yesterday morning. What was Beth doing yesterday morning? Okay, so go ahead and take some time to complete the rest of this exercise, and again, pause the video and continue when you're finished. Okay, so let's look at number 2. Teresa and Jimmy was watch TV all day. Okay, so the first mistake is here, was. It needs to be were, because Teresa and Jimmy is third person plural. And then, of course, here, since we are doing, since we are practicing past continuous tense, this should be watching. Okay, so let me move this. Yeah, watching. So Teresa and Jimmy were watching TV all day. And then number 3, I was talk my friend on Monday night. Okay, so in this case, same thing. We need to say I was talking. Now, something's missing. I was talking my friend on Monday night. You should include talking with my friend on Monday night. So I know it's a little bit confusing, but let me read it one more time. I was talking with my friend on Monday night. So you need this preposition. Okay, and then number 4, were he writing a letter? So this is not correct because he is third person singular. So we need to say was he, and then writing is not the correct spelling. We need to say writing. So only 1 T. Okay, so was he writing a letter? Okay, and then number 5, what was you wear yesterday? Okay, so since the subject is second person, we need to use were. What were you? And then also wearing, ing. Okay, because this is past continuous tense. What were you wearing yesterday? And then number 6, I were baking cake for my daughter. Okay, now I is first person singular, so we need to say I was baking cake for my daughter. And then the second mistake is actually here. I was baking a cake for my daughter. I was baking a cake for my daughter. And cake is a singular countable noun, so we need to include an article. I was baking a cake for my daughter. Now, let me make a note. Sometimes cake can be non-count. So, for example, when you are talking about a full cake, like the actual cake, then we need to say a cake. But if you are talking about eating cake, then you don't need to say a, because you're not eating the whole cake. If you just want to eat cake, then you can say, can I have some cake? Not can I have a cake. If you say, can I have a cake? Then you're talking about the whole cake. Now you can say, can I have a piece of cake? Then of course it's just part of the cake. I'm sorry if that's confusing, but again, when we say a cake, we are talking about the whole cake. And when we say just cake, then you're usually talking about when you eat some cake. Okay? So let's now look at exercise C. What were you and your family doing at each of these times yesterday? So you can see 7 a.m., 9 a.m., noon, 3, 6, and 10 p.m. So, for example, I was sleeping. My children were watching TV. So you can make 2 sentences, one for yourself and the other for your children or your husband, or maybe you have just one child, so you can just say my son or my daughter in that case. Or you don't have to explain what all of your children were doing if you have more than one child. So it's up to you. Just make sentences using past continuous. That's the important thing. And one will use first person singular, and the other sentence will use third person singular or plural. That's why there are two sentences. Now you can also make the first sentence first person plural. For example, you might say my husband and I were sleeping, or my children and I were sleeping. Anyway, the point is to make past continuous sentences with different persons, like first, second, third person, and singular and plural. Okay, so take some time to complete this activity. And for this one, we cannot check the activity, so when you're done, you can go on to our next lesson, which is actually, it's our next video. So I will see you for lessons C and D in our next video. Okay,